Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
And a happy franchise tag deadline day to all who celebrate, gentlemen.
Love it. I love this time of year, man. This is so great. Every day, everything changes. Stories change constantly. It's fantastic.
So we do have, I don't know if it was breaking news last night, so it's kind of developing news here regarding Sam Darnold and the Vikings that we will get into here. Is this a hot take? Latest Vikings news. A reminder that on Monday, tickets go on sale for the 4th annual, the 2025 Purple Daily Draft Party presented by Standard Heating and Air. And this is going to be back at the Fillmore in Minneapolis, where we had such an amazing time last year. Mark your calendar, Thursday, April 24th, 7 p.m., and then mark it again for this upcoming Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time. That's when you can get your hands on general admission and or VIP tickets to the draft party. scorenorth.com/draft. It's live right now. You can't get the tickets right now, but you can see more information and you can at least have it saved, ready for 10 a.m. Central Time on Monday. We are super excited. We actually had a little pre-planning production meeting with Pat Lager, our Declan Goff lookalike producer who does all the video production.
Hey, Dex, that's Pat.
Yeah,
That's Pat.
Doppelganger Pat Lager. So yeah, scorenorth.com/draft. Be ready right at 10 a.m. Central Time. And also every week during the offseason, is this a hot take presented by Standard Heating and Air? And I have one for you guys, but Dex, let's shout out Standard for a second.
Yeah, shout out to Standard. They can help you out with all those HVAC and furnace needs. And right now you can save up to $7,500 on a mini split ductless system or a high efficiency heat pump combo with Standard Heating and Air. Take a look at that furnace and then just call Standard, because there's no point to DIY anything with that furnace and HVAC when our guys and our friends at Standard come out there, take a look at the furnace for you, and make sure if it needs an update or just needs a once-over. Thankfully, they can help you out. Go to standardheating.com to learn more. A proud sponsor of our Purple Daily Draft Party. Go to standardheating.com to learn more.
Okay, gentlemen, is this a hot take?
All right, here we go.
So multiple reports last night, basically all of the heavy hitter NFL insiders from Rappaport to Pelissero, Schefter, Diana Rossini, they all must have gotten the same mass text message or something. The Vikings will not be franchise tagging Sam Darnold by the 3 p.m. Central Time deadline today. So this means he will become a free agent. The Vikings aren't going to tag him and keep him, nor will they be tagging him and trading him, which is the debate that we've been having on this show. So he will become a free agent, free to negotiate with any team he wants on Monday. And there's some reports also saying, particularly from Ian Rappaport, that the Vikings do want to retain him still, that he's going to hit free agency and test the market, and that if they can get him back for something under $40 million a year, that they do want to bring him back, which I don't know. I have a hard time believing, but is this a hot take? The idea that the Vikings could tag and trade Sam Darnold for something of value was foolish all along, and everyone on this show should be chastised and fired, especially Phil Mackey.
It is not a hot take that they should have franchised him. You are correct. I only disagreed with you because when you looked at how it was going, I thought, okay, more and more, they're probably not going to. But did they? I think the first question is, did they explore this exact scenario at the Combine? I think the answer is 100%. Like, this is why reports surfaced that the market for Darnold wasn't as strong as the Vikings had hoped. This was always going to be a very fine thread to sort of fit through, right? Like, this was always going to be a difficult thing. But where I agree with you completely is it would have been business malpractice not to explore it. Like, you have an asset here. And if you had multiple teams and Sam's like, oh, that's fine, yeah, I'll do it. No, they 100% wanted to do it. Now, Did it come to a point where the cons outweighed the pros and it probably just became a non-starter? It appears that that's the case. But I do not think, like, if the next step is for fans to say, how could Kwesi drop the ball here? Like, what's he doing? Why did the Vikings not do this? The Vikings should all be fired from a front office perspective. I think they explored it. I just think it's not possible. And on the back end of this, I do want to get into what is going on here as far as the reporting, because I would like to chastise some folks. But you were not wrong. I'm with. In fact, I was wrong. No. I'm saying it was not a hot take, though. You were right in what you were in your original idea, and I talked about it too. Made perfect sense. I think they got to a place where it wasn't going to work out, but I do not think that this is for a lack of trying. I don't think that the Vikings heard what you said and said, "Oh, we're not going to do that." No, we don't want a draft pick back. The Vikings wanted something back. Unfortunately, they just found out they weren't going to get it.
I'll throw some red meat to the Purple Daily comment section here. You know, when is Mackey going to admit that he's wrong? Well, write that down every Wednesday. But I thought the Vikings could, should, and would franchise tag Darnold, not to keep him, but to leverage him into a second round pick, and a seventh. Take two of the Raiders' 10 picks this season. They can absorb with their $100 million in cap space. I thought that would happen. And I thought a lot of this jockeying for position, you know, these reports that have come out for 2 months of we're definitely going to keep him. We're looking to keep him. I thought that was all massaging the narrative so that they could slap the tag on him and leverage his value. And we'll find out next week if the price tag comes in and he signs for, 2 years and $80 million or something. All right, I guess there was no $100 million contract out there. But I continue to believe, with how desperate a handful of teams are to find a quarterback in a weak quarterback draft, I continue to believe that teams played the Vikings, downplayed their interest, hoping that they would get past the tag deadline date. Because if you're the Raiders or the Steelers or the Titans, you don't want him to be franchised because now you have to give up draft capital and pay him. So I think I was wrong. Either there's no market or the Vikings dismissed the fact that there was a market to do right by the player. I thought this would get done. Matt Castle was tagged and traded with no chance of the Patriots keeping him. This is now 15 years ago because Tom Brady was their starting quarterback, and they got a second-round pick and a tag and trade for Matt Castle. There's precedent here. There's several other non-quarterback position players that garnered first and second round picks recently in tag and trades. So either the Vikings completely misgauged his value, or teams have gotten a lot smarter and more conservative with what they're willing to give up for a quarterback.
I also think it's important to point out that Darnold and his camp likely were not going to be compliant with this. And if they're not, it's going to be like Matt Castle was a young QB who desperately wanted to start after proving that he could.
Isn't that what Sam Darnold is?
Not young, though, and he wants to hit the market, and I think he wants to be in complete control. My guess is that him and his agency were far less amenable to what the Vikings suggested than back in the day with the Patriots. So I think there's just a lot of things here that both sides came across and said, you know what? It's not going to work. And keep in mind, too, when it comes to this entire scenario, as we talked about on Sunday, if the Vikings have played hardball, if Darnold's like, I don't want this, and they're like, sorry, we're going to call your bluff and we are going to eventually trade you. Keep in mind, part of that is that blows up the narrative of the Vikings being a quarterback-friendly place. It's like, okay, so if how
does it blow that up? You resurrected the guy's career.
Because then if you're successful and the Vikings are like, we're going to franchise you, which is a restrictive tag.
Oh, you were almost out of the league and now you're worth $40 million a year. Our bad. Sorry about that.
I'm telling you what the thought process was. I guarantee you the Vikings do not, like we'll get into why is there reporting going on from some very credible sources that Darnold, the Vikings want him back. Why? It's unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary at this point. But you know why it is? Because the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell especially want to, and we went through this last year. We've all forgotten. A year ago, March, we have like completely forgotten about Kirk because the reporting was the exact same. Why? Because the Vikings don't want to offend Kirk Cousins, because the Vikings don't want to offend Sam.
So I did some digging on this notion that you want to do right by the player because you don't want to get the image of being a team that screws a player with the franchise tag, which is funny. It's like, again, Darnold was a punchline 12 months ago and borderline out of the league, and you resurrected him into a fringe MVP candidate. So sorry if at the end we want to maybe get a little something in return for the work that we put in as a franchise. But this notion that teams become villainous when they franchise tag players. Well, 3 of the most recent examples of tag and trades are Packers Devontae Adams, Dolphins with Jarvis Landry, and Seahawks with Frank Clark. All 3 of those franchises are highly regarded around the NFL. The Dolphins just finished first in the league's, the NFLPA's player survey. The Packers are always in the top 6 or 7. And the Seahawks have been a well-regarded franchise for 15 years.
Yep.
It's like team players didn't churn on those franchises. Oh my God, look what they did to Jarvis Landry. How dare them?
Because in all 3 cases, though, if I am not mistaken, the player and the team had fallen into crosshairs and were in actually a dispute. There's no dispute here. Like the Vikings would start the dispute by saying, we're tagging you. I'm just telling you, I guarantee you, because the Cousins thing was the exact same. We want Kirk Cousins back. You know what? No one reports. Okay, that's awesome. You want Kirk Cousins back. No one reports the price tag. Like,
yeah, you're gonna go after some reporters here. Let's clear some space for that right now.
Rappaport, our guy Tommy Schefter. If you're gonna say the Vikings want him back, the next question, whoever is telling you this, is to say, okay, what's the price tag? Because if you say, like the Cousins thing, what did we find out after the fact? We found out that the Vikings wanted Kirk back. And you know what they did? They took a piece of paper and they put it in front of Kirk and said, this is the price. And Kirk's like, whoa, that's not what I want.
I have a family to feed.
Yeah. And they said, oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Then you're not coming back. So number one is, if you're going to tell me the Vikings want Darnold back, tell me the damn price. Or at least point out that might be an option. Like, we're acting like, well, the Vikings are going to get to March 10th and then 12th, and they're going to panic and say, oh, okay, we'll just give you $45 million a year. They're not going to do that. So first of all, this is bogus reporting because you're not giving me the price, and you didn't do it with Cousins, and you didn't learn from that. So that's a bunch of BS. Don't tell me you are gaslighting through the team what the situation is, unless you can tell me the Vikings are prepared to offer Sam Darnold. I am reporting exclusively that they're going to, it's going to be a 3-year contract at $50 million per year. Okay, then he's coming back. But you are literally falling into the same trap, which is, well, they want him back. Well, you know what? Of course they want him back at their price tag. And the other thing too, and this is the other thing that drives me crazy, a year ago, and this was the fans to a certain degree, this was the reporters, not us, but a lot of reporters. Well, if Cousins leaves, what are you going to do? Like, if Cousins leaves, what? You don't have a quarterback. Like, what are you going to do? And the Vikings are like, calm down. We'll draft one. And then before that, what do? They sign Darnold, right? Well, he sucks. He can't play. What are you doing? You guys are a joke. You guys are a complete joke. What happened? It worked out. So we are revisiting history, but everyone, or I shouldn't say, that's not fair. A lot of high-profile people that cover the league are just choosing to ignore it, and we're going through the same thing. I'm sure in some of their minds, they're like, you can't let Sam go. Look at the season he had. Went through the same damn thing last year with Kirk. This whole thing drives me absolutely crazy because it lacks common sense. That part.
I'm gonna give Judd a round of applause here, cutting open a vein. By the way, Rappaport did this morning on Good Morning Football. He did finally, instead of these kind of vague, nebulous, they want him back at their price. Okay, well, I mean, look at some of the other quarterbacks around the league. Even like the 15th highest paid quarterback is making $40 million a year. So what is that price? And he did say something along the lines of, if they could get Darnold for something slightly lesser than the franchise tag price. So is he reporting then that if Darnold would agree to like a 3-year, $90 million contract, $30 million a year, which I think I would be shocked if he signs for something that low. Shocked. But let's say teams have smartened up and the last 2 games were such a wake-up call that that's the price tag. Is that a good move for the Vikings to essentially wipe out the rookie scale contract of the 10th overall pick? So again, it doesn't like something doesn't match. Either the Vikings are lying to preserve face, which is fine, whatever. Like they want to maintain, they want to be the good guys here, or they're about to wipe out the rookie scale contract of the 10th overall pick.
Why wasn't the report last night though? Very simply, they're not franchise tagging. Like that's the news. That's awesome. I don't need your but they still want to bring him back. I don't need that. Just say you're not going to. And you know what?
Just break up. Maybe we can what if we just like live separately for a little while? We can still talk on the phone.
But you don't even need to tell me that. And here's the thing too. If Sam Darnold comes back here for anything less than $40 million per year, his representatives at CAA should all be fired. Because if he comes back here, let's say he comes back here at 30, okay? You know what? I got a clock, and it's ticking right now. And that clock is the countdown to J.J. McCarthy starting. Let's say we're 7 games into next year, and it's not going so great. Not going awful, but it ain't going great. And J.J. McCarthy is healthy. You know what? Sam Darnold and his representatives have just put themselves in the jackpot because he's going to be benched. So like none of this makes any sense.
Yeah, but this is why the Vikings were, and this is why I continued to pound the table on yesterday's episode, call his bluff. The Vikings were never a viable option to go back to because they're not going to give you the 3-year 120 that the Raiders are probably going to give you. And B, if you threaten to, hey, I'll play on the 1-year tag. No, you won't, because if J.J. McCarthy replaces you, now you just squandered your chance to make a bunch of money. Can I tell you real quick, the thing, I've been thinking about this, tweeting through it, like what is, at its core, what is the thing that actually bothers me the most about this Darnold tag gate, if you will? Mm-hmm. I think it's because the Vikings, because you brought up Cousins, for instance, the Vikings have now allowed, in my opinion, their 3 biggest player assets of the Kwesi-KOC era to walk for virtually nothing. So Daniil, and I'll give you their value at the time that they went to a new team too. Daniil Hunter was one of the best edge rushers in football. Goes to the Texans and ranks 5th in the NFL in sacks. Still absolutely one of the best pass rushing edge guys in the entire league. Super high value, premium position, right? Kirk Cousins. I know, obviously, in retrospect, that contract was not a good move by the Falcons, but the market was the market. They continued to give him, and this goes back to Spielman too, they continued to give him no trade clause power year after year after year. And they continued to essentially just give in to what Kirk and his agent demanded with the contractual discussions. He was worth on the market a $180 million contract in free agency. He walked. And now Sam Darnold, a former top 5 pick who threw 35 touchdowns, ranked 6th in the NFL in passer rating, and was a fringe MVP candidate until like week 18. So those 3 guys, Hunter at his peak, Cousins, even though we knew he was getting a little older and the Achilles injury, the market dictated that he was still worth paying $180 million to. And Sam Darnold, we'll see what his market is, but again, a former top 5 pick. And to this point, for those 3 players, the Vikings have landed a 3rd-round comp pick. Now, they might get a comp pick in 2026, depending on how the equation works out here in the next month. Free agents in, free agents out. But I think that's the thing that kind of bothers me is like the nice guy approach. You know, well, we just let's pull the locker room after week 8. Do we want to keep Daniil Hunter or let's make a run at this thing with Nick Mullins? I think big picture. Dude, the Packers decided we're done with Aaron Rodgers and we're going to get something for him. There's been the Seahawks decided we're done with Russell Wilson and we're going to get something for him. And the Vikings with Daniil, with Kirk, and with Sam, it's like, well, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just, that's what I think. That's what bothers me.
The Daniil one, I'm completely with you, not because of a franchise tag, but because of the fact that you were in a rough season. It was the deadline. So teams are desperate for players like that. Like, they will give you more because it's like, oh my God, we could win if we had this guy, right? And that's the one where, yeah, they got sort of hot. And now it's like, and, Kwesi supposedly walks into the locker room at TCO and they're like, don't make any changes. Here we come. And that's where he's got to put his foot down and say, no, sorry, boys. Got off to a bad start. And you know what? We are about to capitalize. Like, that's my biggest one. And I agree completely. And I think that was a massive blown opportunity, especially when the fact was, if I'm not mistaken, the deadline hit days after Cousins tore his Achilles. And instead you go out and make a trade for a quarterback. You're like, we can save the season. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, hold on a second here. God just gave you a gift. He gave you the gift of seeing your starting quarterback is done for the season. And now you've got this asset who is going to walk, and you knew he was going to walk, and you didn't capitalize. I'm with you completely there. And that was frustrating because that was a golden opportunity to cash in at a perfect time. And that's how you get draft picks, for instance, for 2025.
Right. And at the end of the day, like, they're still, as a franchise, in a really, really good spot with a young, talented, big-armed quarterback who is cheap for the next half decade. They've got the 6th most money to spend in free agency. They do have a first-round pick. Like, they just won 14 games, so I don't want to be overly negative here. But when you sit here and it'd be nice if the Vikings had some extra draft capital. Boy, it'd be nice if they haven't been either aggressive enough or they haven't been maybe out in front enough of some of these big fork in the road situations. And so I think, sleeping on it, that's what bothers me, is the asset management part of this. Could they overcome it and still win a Super Bowl in the next few years with great coach, great quarterback? Absolutely. I'm very optimistic about this franchise. But this particular thing has now happened 3 times with a big-time asset. And if on Monday Darnold signs for $30 million a year, cool. Wow. Phil, 1,000% wrong the entire time, misgauged this entire situation. But in a league where Trevor Lawrence, who has a career passer rating lower than Gardner Minshew, collected $275 million on a contract. In a league where Jordan Love played 8 good games for a half a season and collected a $220 million contract. Tua suffers a concussion, not to be callous, once every 5 weeks and got $212 million. Kirk Cousins was 36, coming off an Achilles and got $180 million. You're telling me there's no market for Sam? I just, that's where I'm at with this.
I think that there was somewhat I don't think that the market was zero. I just think at the end of the day, because it takes this trade would have taken a lot of things coming together. My guess is that's what got in the way more so. It's not just one thing. I don't think that the Vikings went to the combine and the Steelers said, well, we don't want him. I think it was more so from their talks with Darnold's camp, from their talks with teams. This to me was a lot more layered probably than what we talked about with Hunter, which to me was a trade deadline obvious move.
And on those conversations, if you're the Steelers, if you're the Raiders, if you're the Titans, this is all the big game of poker here.
Yeah.
You have to downplay your interest in Darnold until after the tag deadline, because you don't want the Vikings to tag him, because that means if we want him, now we have to pay him and give up a pick. So it is in your best interest at that poker table in Indianapolis at St. Elmo's over a spicy shrimp cocktail or whatever, in the lobby bar at the Marriott or whatever, to be I don't know, those last 2 games kind of bothered us. Yeah, he still has the Jets and the Panthers stuff from his past. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where, if you're the Vikings, you would have had to stare across the table and say, bleep, bull bleep, bull bleep. We know you're desperate. We're going to facilitate this, and they're not going to today.
Do you think it's impacted too by the fact that, as Dukes has said, Kwesi was sick half the time?
Well, yeah, he was not in some of the big
meetings. He was legitimately, I guess, sick. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Because he's the guy. O'Connell would not be in a position. I don't think O'Connell would be the guy to stare across the table and call your bluff from a like front office perspective.
Yeah.
Brzezinski might, but I mean, if your GM is in his room with a box of Kleenexes and he's sick, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just throwing
This was just like, to me, such an obvious tag and trade bluff to be called, but here we are, and we'll see. Hey, again, we'll see. We'll know on Monday if that dude signs for $50 million a year. It'll still be underneath Tua, underneath Jordan Love, underneath some of these other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
With the cap going up, it'll be way less than Dak Prescott, and we will know on Monday. We will know on Monday.
I just want people to quit reporting that, like, the Vikings won him back. The Vikings won him back. That's driving me absolutely crazy.
I think the combination of them drafting J.J. McCarthy, knowing he's the heir apparent, and Sam Darnold literally crapping down his legs in back-to-back of the most important games really put this in a really tough spot for them. It put them in a really tough spot, and the other teams said, we'll just wait for you to go into free agency. We're not even going to engage in a franchise tag with them. And if you want a franchise tag, go with them. Go ahead. Franchise them. Put them for $40 million and see what happens for you guys. I think the combinations of both these things end up just really hurting the Vikings and Sam for playing so bad.
Yeah, well, this is going to... Sam's now going to probably get... I guess he'll probably get more money now because if like 3 or 4 teams... And this is great for Sam.
Yeah, it's what Sam wanted.
He gets to go out and play teams off of each other. So, all right, we'll get to the rest of this bin of Vikings news here. There's kind of an overflowing bin, so we'll get to as much as we can, and maybe we have some for later on in the week here. But a shout out to the Northwest Sports Show is coming to town here, boys.
Exactly right. March 13th through the 16th is coming back to the Minneapolis Convention Center. Find the newest in fishing and outdoor gear, boats, RVs, travel, power sports, and more. Check out daily seminars from your favorite outdoor experts, plus explore family-friendly features across the show, including a new RV area. Thursday, March 13th, the first day, is Senior Day. Free admission for those 60-plus with a valid ID at the box office. Friday, March 14th, check this out. Friday night fish fry. Ooh, I like a good fish fry. Enjoy a 4-piece walleye dinner with tartar sauce, lemon wedge with fries. That sounds good. While supplies last. Admission, adults 13 plus at the box office, $15. Adults 13 plus online only, $13. Children ages 12 and under free with the admission paid of an adult. Plan your outing today. Save $4 on tickets using the promo code SCORE, SKOR, at northwestsportshow.com. Again, the Northwest Sports Show, March 13th through the 16th at the Minneapolis Convention Center.
All right, Minnesota Rusco has been Minnesota's hometown remodeler since 1955. And with 70 years of experience, you can count on them for anything interior, exterior you can think of. Windows, doors, siding, bathrooms, kitchens, decks, roofing. And this March, where we're all about feeling lucky in the month of March with whether it's basketball or St. Patty's Day. It's the month of luck. Everything at Minnesota Rusco is 20% off. So it's your lucky day if you call Minnesota Rusco. 20% off bathrooms, kitchens, windows, siding, you name it. No interest, no monthly payments for a full year. You save 20%. It's not just lucky, it's smart. It's a smart way to GM your remodel situation. Call today or go to minnesotarusco.com if you're looking to make your remodel a reality. minnesotarusco.com, serving Minnesotans since 1955. Okay. The latest Vikings news. Let's start with our guy Alec Lewis from The Athletic on the Vikings' pursuit of free agent guards next week. Headlining the list of free agent guard options for the Vikings is Colts guard Will Fries, which we talked about on the Blueprint episode yesterday. The Vikings may be bidding against multiple teams, however, including the Chicago Bears. He did fracture his right tibia last year. He's recovering, but he's young, versatile, he's productive. He fits the Vikings' preferred age range. The Vikings interior has struggled mightily against stunts and other movement since Kevin O'Connell arrived in 2022. Moving defenders on run plays in the red zone has also been another consistent issue. position a player like Will Fries alongside Christian Darrisaw or Brian O'Neill, and the Vikings would be giving themselves a much better chance. It could happen that Fries signs elsewhere, and Alec writes, someone like Baltimore Ravens' Patrick McCarry might then be in play. 27 years old. We've scooped him up on the Blueprint episodes before. He can play all 5 offensive line positions. So Alec Lewis, based on his conversations in Indianapolis, specifically mentioning Will Fries and Patrick McCarry, who are projected to be kind of in that B level behind where Trey Smith was valued at as the top guard.
Right. So I do think his point about the Bears is spot on. I think the Vikings and Bears are going to be huge competitors at the guard spot. If you got one of those two, though, I wouldn't complain. I would love to see them go get, as we did in the Blueprint, either a center and guard or 2 guards. But I would also like to see one of those come from that pool now that Trey Smith is gone, that, is the Fries or the McCarry pool. But I do, the one thing to keep in mind, too, is guards have become a commodity. Guards now have been, for the past 5-6 years? Guards get paid. They don't get paid like tackles, but they make a lot. So it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a question of, do the Vikings have the cash to spend? Because they definitely do from a cap standpoint. I think the question is going to be, how many teams pursue these guys? And what we don't know, too, is, yes, the Vikings have a lot of cap space, but do they have a limit on certain guys? So like if the Bears come through and say, Will Fries is our guy and we don't care, because we've seen that. And just to be clear, that could be definitely irresponsible at times. Like, it's a fine line of, you should have spent more, or, oh my God, you just spent too much. So I think we need to be prepared when the legal tampering period opens on Monday. I think we do need to be prepared, as is the case every year, for some sticker shock. And what we don't know, again, is, do the Vikings have sort of caps on certain players?
Oh, we need to be prepared for sticker shock and free agency, that players who you thought didn't have a market might have a bigger market. Is that what you're saying? Just trying to clarify.
You know what? I'm good. I'm good. I just want people to quit saying he's coming back. Okay.
You mean teams are trying to suppress value in the weeks leading up to bluff at the poker table? Okay.
I'm good on that part. I just quit saying he's coming back.
It will be interesting to see how quickly some of those guards and defensive tackles just fly off the board quickly, and how patient or how aggressive was Kwesi trying to make sure that they can give them a big bag, because they are going to fly off. To Judd's point, those first few days, they're just going to, what happens if they strike out? And then especially teams knowing that in the draft, oh crap, we didn't get the guard we wanted, we didn't get the defensive tackle we wanted, we have limited draft resources. So I think overpaying for something, even if it's McCarry or one of these B-level guys like Fries too, they might have to, just to prove to the fact that we need to solve this problem now.
Well, and there seems to be enough solutions at defensive tackle and running back in the draft where you're picking first round, maybe tackle, and then third round, fifth round running back. Not that there's some guards and some interior offensive linemen here, but it just seems like throwing money at the guard problem makes sense. There's options, and throwing draft capital at the defensive tackle problem probably makes the most sense. Okay, yes. Rich Eisen did a segment yesterday on his show, rumors that I heard at the NFL Combine, and he had a couple Vikings-related ones. We'll throw this one out, because one of them was that Sam Darnold is plan A, which, we've already exhausted that topic. But the other one he said was the Colts' idea for competition for Anthony Richardson is Daniel Jones.
Yep.
You could do a heck of a lot worse than the wide receiver core in that running game with the Colts. Daniel Jones in Indianapolis intrigues me. He's still young. He can run it. He can throw it. And maybe he can light a fire for Anthony Richardson.
Okay, let's unpack this one. Because number one, I do believe that Jones has a market. I don't think it's huge, and I certainly don't think that he's going to command much. But SportsDad took to the Substack last night, because SportsDad likes to get his thoughts together, and it helps to pour them out through my fingers to really get my thoughts going. And here's my assessment. I think that the free agent or pending one that the Vikings are targeting at QB is Daniel Jones. Not Darnold. He's going to be too expensive. But when you think about this, okay, and let's unpack this from Jones' standpoint. So I do think teams are going to come along and say, hey, come in here and compete for a starting job. Now, teams also, though, are trying to or have looked at the Vikings blueprint, right? And they're like, O'Connell's a fixer. Let's go get an O'Connell guy because this league is a copycat league. But the reality is this. If you think about it, okay, Daniel Jones, Colts, they got a decent team. Franchise-wise, a little dicey. Daniel Jones, the other team, Cleveland. Are you kidding me right now? Cleveland is a dump. And look, I like Stefanski, and they've done some good things, but like franchise-wise, they are regressing as a franchise. The Vikings, when Daniel Jones agreed in basically December 1 to sign here to the practice squad. And mind you, we do think that he had offers to sign to 53-man rosters and possibly in Dallas at the time to play. But he was very smart and said, you know what? I need to tamp this down. I'm coming off a terrible experience. My guy, Sammy, is doing great. Like, what does O'Connell know? I'll sign to the practice squad. The more I think about this, is he now, after a month plus, basically, in KOC quarterback rehab school, is Daniel Jones set to fly? Is Daniel Jones set to go, you know what? I'm going to go lead the Cleveland Browns now. You know what, buddy? It's going to happen. You're going to fail miserably. I think the Vikings are going to keep him. I think he comes back and competes because they'll have a competition. McCarthy will win, but they will have one. But, you know, it's funny because the teams that are tied in to Jones now are these, hey, the Cleveland Browns think he can play. Well, the Cleveland Browns are a mess. So I think at the end of the day, there might be an agreement in place for Jones to stay because to get the full experience, starting or not, I think a year here as the backup or if McCarthy gets hurt, starting is the answer.
Yeah, it is a month of quarterback rehab enough to fix all of the quarterback flaws you had. You know, my dad was a very bad alcoholic in his 20s and early 30s before he had me. And he had a lot of stop starts in alcohol rehab. And he told me a story one time where he went like his first time in rehab, he goes for 30 days or whatever. And people were kind of like, you only 30 days for you. We saw you for the last 5 years. Like if on the quarterback side, Daniel Jones for the long term of his career would be best served to chill in Minnesota for 12 months. But it's probably going to cost this is where the Vikings have to figure out. It's going to cost like $10 million where you could get a different backup quarterback for, let's say, $3 million and spend Dude, there are some starting guards on the market that are projected to be maybe $7 to $10 million average annual value. There are like veteran safeties like Justin Simmons that if you need a stopgap starting safety, if Cam Bynum walks, he's projected PFF to make like $6 million. So is the difference between the Vikings have to decide, especially, by the way, if they're not in the business of franchise tagging players that they could get a comp pick in return if Daniel Jones plays and gets a contract next year. But is that let's say there's a $7 million gap between Daniel Jones and another backup quarterback. Is that money well spent, or would you rather spend it on different positions on your roster?
They also have to figure out, the Vikings do, and Jones, do I want to find probably more guaranteed money elsewhere? Because like the Colts, I think would give him more guaranteed money than the Vikings would. Because I think there's more of a path with like Cleveland or Indianapolis where he might be able to start right away or start quicker than what the plan is with McCarthy. So if you're Daniel Jones, are you willing to sacrifice? And look, the dude got a ridiculous payday from the Giants, but still, you're an athlete. You get the chance to get life-changing money. I get it. Does he want to accept potentially lesser money if he wants to stay with the Vikings as opposed to going somewhere else and getting more guaranteed dough?
I think the problem now, though, is so he is in let's say technically like step 2 of the Darnold phase of his coming back. If he goes and takes a little bit more of a bag, let's say from the Browns, okay, and he fails, he's now had a complete setback, and now he's like, who wants him at that point? The other thing that we didn't talk about this at the time, and I didn't realize this until Florio posted something on PFT, I guess a couple of weeks ago, about this. Daniel Jones sort of tipped his hand when he signed with the Vikings to the 53-man roster for the playoffs, okay? That, as we talked about at that point, assured the Vikings of a potential comp pick if he leaves and goes and plays. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't think about was by doing that, he also held himself until free agency officially starts, because if you're on the practice squad, you can walk away the next day and start to explore options. Yep. He didn't do that, and it was only for a game check, so it's not like that there was a Daniel Jones financial windfall here. So just another piece here that I think is intriguing, because if he had just stayed on the practice squad the day after the season ends, he can start to shop himself. He elected not to do that.
Yep. Okay, more Vikings news. The latest Vikings news. Ian Rappaport reporting the Vikings hired Saints offensive assistant Jordan Traylor as their new assistant offensive coordinator and assistant quarterbacks coach. So he replaces Grant Udinski, another young sort of offensive coaching prodigy who went to the Jaguars, right? So Traylor is just 31 years old. Udinski was like 28 or 29. And he's been with the Saints the last handful of years as an offensive assistant. Before that, he was a coach for a couple of years at Texas and then Arkansas. He did play 2 years at Texas A&M in 2014-15. So they found O'Connell likes to bring in sort of smart, up-and-coming minds that could eventually be elevated to coordinators or whatnot. So I don't know if you have any takes on Jordan Traylor, the new Vikings assistant OC.
I think if you're an assistant coach and young, and especially one that gets to work with quarterbacks, this is a great job right now. This is a great job. Because you get to come in here, and yes, O'Connell's good, but you get to work with a coaching staff that's really good. And I would say this, I would say the opportunity to learn at the foot of O'Connell, and probably to a certain degree as well, Flores, is huge. Because think of the stability here. And I got a note on Twitter last night that said, you guys keep calling the Vikings stable. Well, they don't win this and that. Okay, calm down. Think about, I'm not talking about from a championship. Yes, they do not have a Super Bowl championship, but look at what we've seen here as well at times. Okay. And even with the Wilfs, there have been years and there have been periods of time where we have seen stability not exist. And think about now, you can say we can dissect O'Connell and we can dissect a lot of things individually. But from a 10,000-foot view, if you were plopped in to watch a year of how this team operates, you're going to say it's stable. And that's coming from me.
It's absolutely. I mean, the Steelers are stable.
Correct.
You can be stable and also have not won a championship in X amount of years, or in the Vikings case, ever.
Yes.
There are other franchises like the Giants that are unstable that have won 2 championships in the last 20
Washington
years.
Has become stable.
Yeah. Well,
and
very recently.
Right. But they were a gong show.
Yep.
So
ownership,
really
front
job.
And then let's throw one more out here. Alec Lewis, Athletic, on fire with his notebook the other day.
It's a great notebook.
He threw out an interesting veteran defensive tackle name. So he points out that Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard were on the field for 222 snaps last season against pass plays, and the Vikings had one of the worst pressure rates on those snaps. So when they had their biggest guys on the field, their down linemen on defense, their pass rush floundered in those situations. Multiple team sources reiterated the team's commitment to adding players, emphasis on the plurality, players, to strengthen the Vikings' ability to push the interior of the pocket. Milton Williams, who starred in the Super Bowl for the Eagles, could be in play depending on his asking price. Another interesting candidate who flies in the face of the Vikings' typical free agent checklist is Javon Hargrave, he's older than the typical Vikings free agent. He's 32. And he was out for a large chunk last year with a partially torn triceps in San Francisco. But the year prior to that, he was still one of the best interior pass rushers in the league. his last 3 healthy seasons, 2 in Philadelphia, 1 in San Francisco, he's racked up a total of 190 pressures over 3 years from mostly the interior and over 30 sacks. So, you're not going to give him a bag for like 3 years or anything, but if you drafted someone and then you brought in Javon Hargrave, buy low off an injury at age 32, that's not going to cost you $20 million a year, and just build some extra depth, get a couple of guys through a couple different avenues. I'd be all aboard this. It would not cost you the $20 million a year that Milton Williams is going to command.
No. I would say this. The Vikings definitely, if they're going to make a splash signing and give a guy multiple years, prefer a guy, as most teams do, going into his second contract, right? Mm-hmm. But I would also push back a little bit and say for a certain amount of guys, this type of signing, it makes sense. And the Vikings have done this. Shaq Griffin, Gilmore. Like if you're going to bring in a guy for on a 1-year, not huge contract, yes, do it. I think it makes perfect sense. If you're going to sign a guy to a 3-year contract, then yeah, Hargrave's not your guy. But I think the Vikings want to get younger. I think the Vikings are going to make signings that will show that starting next week. I also think that there is certainly a basket of roster space for guys like this who are professional, veterans, aren't expensive, but give you a credibility and can help develop the young guys. But I did think the stats that were thrown out about the lack of interior pressure was really, really interesting.
Yep. Interior pass rush win rate.
Football.
It's so important. Good.
So, all right. Well, there's your latest Vikings news. We'll see what happens in the days coming up here. But, yeah, Sam Darnold's going to test free agency on Monday. Monday is when the negotiation period opens up, and that's where we are just going to be on Monday through the next couple weeks after that. We're just going to be on watch for emergency episodes,
on call, like doctors.
It's going to be great. We're not going to sleep. We're just going to wait for Vikings free agency news. So yeah, if you made it to the end of this episode, click that like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification button on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. And then if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, it goes a long way if you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review. We appreciate you guys. It is reckless speculation season galore here. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.